Good evening and welcome to a Daniel L. Hightower Wednesday, the Buddy Martin Show and podcast on a National Signing Day. Stand by.
Yes, it's time again for Buddy Martin. Call him up and tell him what you're thinking. But be kind because he's doing the best he can.
Better, stronger, faster.
Mama says that alligators are ornery because they got all them teeth but no toothbrush.
Hey, what if the voice calls while you're gone?
Take a message.
Bye!
You ready, champ?
I'm ready for this my whole life.
I'm incapable of small talk. But that's why you love me, right?
Kind of intimidating to be in the presence of so many great athletes.
Good evening and welcome to I wanted to say Monday. For some reason, it feels like Monday. It's just the first day of recruiting. National Signing Day is in the can, and we got a few more stragglers coming in. But overall, how do you rate this Florida class based on what little information we have about them? We know about the big suite for the Lakeland trio, the Lakeland 3, as we say. And we're going to talk with someone later on who knew the Lakeland 7. Can tell you their names. Can you tell me the name of the Lakeland 7, 2007? Yeah. We're going to be talking momentarily with Franz Beard, and also in a bit with our friend Graham Hall, who joins us in just a moment from up in chilly Gainesville. I know he's been busy today, as have so many of the scribes out there. Trying to
Can you see me?
What's going on, my man?
How you doing, buddy? Good to be here, man.
Thanks for coming on tonight, and it's been a busy day for everybody.
Man.
Trying to catch up with what's going on there. And before we get into the X's and O's and all that sort of stuff, and the stories, which of course among them are, was this a good haul, an average haul, or not a very good haul? We'll discuss that ranking in just a moment. So I get you up on the screen here, and then I think, as Dan Mullen likes to say, he can tell you in 3 to 4 years. But you don't get that long sometimes because the rating services are already out there. And particularly before we get to the Lakeland 3, which is the best feel-good story of the day, I'll just say, first of all, I saw some of your recruiting stuff online a moment ago, and you look like you've been through the ringer. How are you feeling? You didn't look like you were feeling very well.
I was a little bit tired. I did get back. I was in St. Louis until Tuesday morning. I flew back at 2 a.m. and was up all day, and then I covered the Mercer basketball game last night until about midnight, and then I was at the office this morning at 6 a.m., so I was a little bit tired. After today, I'm getting a little bit of time off, as everyone should for the holidays, as you know. So, I'm enjoying everything though. But to answer your question, buddy, I mean the day started off incredibly at 7:08. Michael Tarquin was the first one to send everything in, and you do see occasionally prospects who commit, even a week before signing day, sign somewhere else. That happened with Daxton Hill, the kid who flipped from Michigan to Alabama, and then he just signed with Michigan today. So you never really know what can happen, and that leads me to the point that the biggest thing for Dan Mullen is signing all their commits, not losing everybody. And you think as a Florida fan often that everything is solid and some of these guys are locked in. You go to the New Year's Six Bowl, but that's never certainly the case. You look at guys like Jalen Humphreys. He kind of had all the leverage with Florida in a sense. He knows he's the lone defensive tackle at a unit that's going to lose 3 defensive linemen, and he's got 13 other SEC. He's got 12 other SEC offers. So for Florida, and I'm not trying to take a shot at anyone, but Sal Sunseri has been, as we know, dealing with an unfortunate family incident, and so you're kind of losing a guy who's been the primary recruiter in a sense. That's just saying plain facts. So with Jalen Humphreys, it was never a guarantee for sure that he was going to sign, and he was the last one going in. I'm not trying to scare anyone, but that's how I'm saying it. That the big takeaway is getting 20 guys to sign. You look around, Florida State signed 13. I think Miami added 14. Maybe a little higher than that. I have to go look when you guys can tell me out there. But that's big for Dan Mullen. Last year they signed 13, and they got, I think, 6 of those guys on campus as early enrollees. They're going to get 10 of those. Buddy, 5 of those 10 are offensive linemen on an offensive line that's losing 4 starters.
Yeah.
You know, we talked to Dan Mullen tonight at 6:15, and he said that they're going to need some of those offensive linemen to come in right away. You know, they signed 4 offensive linemen last year. They signed 7 this year. That's 11 guys. That's a complete overhaul of the unit from McElwain, and we even forget that, you know, some of those guys are a year removed from being kind of earlier recruited by Will Muschamp. So this is a complete overhaul of the unit moving forward, and it continues a huge transformation of Florida's offense that Dan Mullen has done in just 12 months, buddy.
Yes. Now, the best feel-good story of the day was the Lakeland 3, as we like to call them. It was a triumphant moment for lots of reasons, not the least of which you got 3 terrific players all there that fill some needs in the Lakeland 3, as we like to call them. And at a time when they needed a boost, it seemed like things were slow and lethargic and not everything was coming together. And that Florida was dropping out down to, you know, almost 30th at one point. And I don't put too much in those early things. I don't even put that much in the star rating, but that's what it is. And, you know, it seemed like there was missing oomph until that hit. And the good part about the story was the history behind Lakeland and Florida and Ahmad Black and whatever. I asked someone today, could you name the Lakeland 7?
Ooh, you know? That's tough. No, I can't.
I looked them up. I remembered 5 of them, but there's a couple you wouldn't remember. I just left that out there for folks to answer. And now it's the Lakeland 3. I might remind folks that not every player who signs turns out to be able to play or gets hurt or whatever. Yeah. Not everything's a slam dunk. There are casualties, you know. But it felt like that was a victory to me. Did it to you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a reason that was on ESPN right before lunch. There wasn't a situation out there across the recruiting trail where 3 guys who were all inside the top ESPN 150, one of who was going to be an early enrollee in just 3 weeks, was going to sign with a program. I mean, Keon Zipperer, you know, you can believe him or not, but he stood up there and said that, you know, Diaby Hammond said that they didn't even tell him until last night that he was going to sign with Florida, and you know, you can believe that. And I've got a bridge in Brooklyn to sell you if you do. But you know, he admitted that him and Lloyd Summerall were going to be a package deal all along.
What that means exactly, but you know.
Yeah, it's that they went on every recruiting trip together. They've played, you know, ball for a decade together, and they've known each other forever, and they know that they're 2 guys who are going to work well in a locker room. I'm not trying to, you know, how do I misconstrue this? I don't want to misconstrue this, but those are 2 guys that, you know, anywhere else they're going, they're going to be very comfortable with each other, and that's very conducive to personal growth, especially as a college-age student. If you're going out of state, you're going someplace far away into a very competitive environment, you don't know if you're going to get along with everyone. It is extremely beneficial to have a very familiar face there, and that's something that they decided on very early on, and they have the talent that all programs would want to recruit those 2 if that's what they want to do. You got to kind of hold 2 spots for them if you're in the final, you know, 3, as Florida was. There were 5 schools willing to take, I think, both of them as a pair, because if they said they're having, you know, if they said they're going to go as a pair, and you know, Keon has 5 hats on and Lloyd has 3 hats on, you know, that really tells you that it's a top 3. So that's really where it is. They both want to go together. Diaby Hammond is considered the number 2 offensive guard by ESPN. Yeah. All these recruiting services can look differently, but Florida's missing both of their guards. He's a guy who has great size, great strength, 6'4", just anchored that team to the state championship with them. That offense was dynamic. So you have to really think this is a coup. You read into recruiting rankings all the time. People love throwing out this hot number that defines the program. They love summing up, you know, hundreds of thousands of hours of work over years with a ranking. Well, put it this way. Those 3 guys committed in 8 minutes, and the rankings went up 7 spots from 22 to 15, or 16, wherever they are now. So that's kind of crazy to think about, and that's how big it is for the, you know, to put it in perspective, buddy.
All right, I think I got Scott Shook. He didn't win anything. It says he's got almost all of them. He's got the Pouncey twins, Ahmad Black, Chris Rainey. Now, but there's a couple of obscure ones in there that you might not get. So let's see if somebody can come up with them. I have nothing to give away, but just see if someone could. So Scott Shook's got 5 of them. So that was 1, 2, 3. Was it 2, 3, 4? 4 of them. 3 to go. All right. So Mary Howard, I don't know Mary, but Mary's been on here a while. She says Steele has already signed, but will announce January 5th. I've heard that rumor around about him for a while.
Yeah, that's a hot rumor. That's a hot rumor.
That's a missing piece right there.
It's a hot rumor.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So he would not be the first player to do so, but it is. You have to think of how rare that would be. He's announcing on January 5th at the U.S. Army All-American Bowl. Last year, a very similar situation, if that were to occur, if that's the rumor. I mean, a guy like Chris Steele, you could easily see him announcing on January 5th as well, and wanting to make sure and letting programs, still go after him for a month, because he can then look at the landscape if that's what he chooses to do. But Nick Bonito last year, a guy out of Fort Lauderdale, ultimately committed to Auburn in the third quarter of the U.S. Army All-American Bowl, and he announced that, he was already signed. So that is something that is very possible, but this is what I'm very interested to know. This is what really kind of gives me, if it sounds like I'm thinking about what I'm saying, there is a huge stipulation that I'm thinking about.
Okay.
On October 15th, the NCAA transfer portal was open, and they've been trying to be more transparent. I know that's not the same thing, but if you do sign a letter of intent, so say he signs before Friday, the NCAA will be notified about that, because while it's a dead period, no coaches would be committed. They would not be allowed to talk to him if he's a signed prospect.
Really?
So in the database, they'd be able to find out that was no longer a prospect that they can talk to, over these next 6 weeks before signing day. They'd be told about that. If they do, they're committing. I don't know if it's a secondary violation. I'm not. So if Chris Steele's done being recruited, then it's very possible that he signed. But he already had his commitment leaked by a writer out there in USC.
Okay. Yeah.
People have already tried to ruin his commitment for a long time.
Yeah.
If he chooses to wait over the next two weeks while signing, and schools find out about it, that's all I'm going to say.
Okay.
I hope it doesn't come. I hope that's not what happens. I hope he gets to go out there in the U.S. Army All-American Bowl and announce it and tell people everything, and that there's no, and there, I've definitely helped with all these projections and talking about it and answering questions. I definitely have helped create the speculation that he could do this for sure. Yeah. But like he's already had his first commitment ruined, so I don't know if that's what he's going to do. But for right now, until January 5th, I wouldn't expect to hear anything on Chris Steele when he goes out there and tells everyone. Because also the video that Zach Abolverdi did for USC, it's 7.5 minutes long, but it greatly captures what is very meaningful to Chris. And it was very unfortunate to those who know Chris that a writer, tried to get ahead of the curve and spoil his commitment before he was ready to announce it on a date that was very meaningful to him on July 7th. So, that's just really where it's at right now. But to answer the good question, if they could get Chris Steele, they could also get Kaiir Elam. And Dan Mullen went out there tonight and said that they're going to address the defensive line and they're going to address the secondary right there in that 6-week period. There was always kind of a scramble before this. A lot of Florida fans can remember this in 2015, 2016, before the early signing window. So many new names kept coming up about who Florida was trying to get, who they were going after. Elijah Conliffe came into the picture very, very late. It's because Florida and a lot of teams couldn't plan it in 2 phases. Now, after signing everyone, they know how many more spots they have. They know what positions they need to address. They don't really need to worry about anyone leaving. They just have one commit unsigned. So it's a lot easier for them to recruit these next 6 weeks because they can view it as a 9-month portion and then a 6-week portion and then a portion before that, obviously. But this is going to be a much easier phase for Florida to pick out targets. That's what they're going to do over the next 3 weeks, buddy.
Right. Okay. Couple of things real quick. I'll move fast. Kerry Howard said, why isn't the number 2 guard in the country, why isn't he a 5-star? Good question.
That's all. That's just so you look at all the prospects in the country. There's thousands. The way that they rank them on this point system that's to the thousandth place. It goes down from a 1.00, which would be the best all-time prospect. About how people rank them. At least this is how 24/7 does it with their algorithm and stuff like that. Offensive guards are rated lower because there's only going to be about 1 or 2 total offensive linemen who are 5 stars. Evan Neal is one of them. He signed with Alabama. He signed with Alabama over Florida, in Miami, and 3 other schools, and that's someone that you would have had to get in 3 years ago.
By the way, they're obviously they led the whole parade in recruiting today again. Wasn't Alabama, Georgia, who was the third one, and then LSU. So I think for the first 6, maybe that sound right. I don't have them in front of me, the rankings, but I guess real quick before I lose you and then the other things. Several people have asked other questions about. We're going to talk about personnel in just a minute. Back to that question on the 4 of the Lakeland 7, and people get mixed up. They think this is what about Wayne Peace? Wayne Peace was much older than that. He wasn't part of that, but so somebody came up with a couple. And the one that's hard to get, Lynn Tyndall got, is Brown, who never played. He got hurt. He was a top flight defensive tackle.
Okay.
He had academic issues. Then he got hurt, and so I don't know what all happened. It didn't work out well for him.
That's unfortunate.
And another one that did play some was Wilson. Steve Wilkes was a fullback on that squad.
Okay.
So I think that gives them to him.
It kind of rings a bell. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, this is before your time. You were in elementary school back then.
A lot of names, man. Yeah, they didn't have Wikipedia back then, man.
Yeah, no. Well, I didn't. Yeah, they didn't.
Huddle.
It's called actually writing it down when you have the information. But anyway,
right. That's very right.
Anyway, so Brown and Wilson, as Lynn points out, were the other 2. And again, Robert Dodson says, Graham, how many to sign in February, and who are the primary targets? You mentioned they were going after DBs, and I think you said DBs and linebackers maybe or something?
DBs and defensive line. You really kind of got to address the defensive line. I mean, they signed 2 Buck guys, and they're going to, they still have – the reason they haven't prioritized it so much, they want to kind of look out who's out there. Maybe they could have got Dorless. He went to Oregon. But you got to think that Andrew Chatfield was a very highly recruited defensive end who barely played last year. They've still got guys like Elijah Conliffe, TJ Slayton, Zach Carter coming back, and several guys that are going to play a lot next year. So who knows how much room there really is for defensive tackles. So they don't want to fill up on that when there were so many other prospects out there. You want to look at your needs rather than going for that 4-star guy that maybe you could get because, obviously they shouldn't turn on a 4-star, but they should look around and pick what needs they need right now. And right now it's defensive lineman and secondary, and those 2 guys I just mentioned, Chris Steele and Kyer Elam, are their top 2 targets, I think, over these next 3 weeks. Abe Elam, his father, is pushing Georgia. Not so much pushing it, but he's kind of not pushing Florida, which is in a sense kind of letting Kyer move towards Georgia, and that may be what happens. But if Florida lands Chris Steele, those 2 could definitely want to play together. They have talked about playing together, and that would be big for him. So if Florida can get both those guys, I'm not trying to mince words here, that would have a monumental impact. Chris Steele is rated as the number 40 overall player on 24/7. One of y'all should check me on that. If they get him alone, he'll move them up 2 spots. They get Kyer Elam. He's the number 9 cornerback in the country. They'll move up to 11, maybe 10 with those 2 guys alone, and then just adding several 3-star prospects. The way the number system works, Florida could get as high as number 8, maybe number 7 if they get a couple 4-stars along with Kyer and Chris Steele. That would be probably a perfect case scenario for Dan Mullen. Finish number 8. That's probably the best they could possibly do. But then, buddy, you look down the line, what really matters and what will define Mullen's tenure are the next 2 classes. And right now, those are top 3 classes right now with Bryce Langston. They got 7 prospects committed in the 2020 class. That's really what Dan Mullen's attention is going to turn to. When you sign 20 guys, you have a chance to prioritize the 2020 class more so than needing to scramble at the end here. And that's great for them, and that's what the top programs are doing right now.
Okay, let's go over some of the players.
Sure.
I don't know much about these guys except what I've read. I've seen a little bit of film and heard a few people talking about it. Guys that know a lot more than I do. And let's just pick out some names. I looked at this, just counting 20? I counted 20 for some reason. I thought there was 21. 20 is what I got. And I went back and just looked at a couple of things like 6.5 of them were defensive players. Meaning the one's an athlete, all right?
Sure.
You out of the 20, let's see how many you got here. How many are from the state of Florida? Let's see. I counted them earlier and wrote them down. I want to say it was 12.
I'm trying to think.
I think 12. I wrote them down someplace. I think
that sounds about right.
Yeah, because they got one from Auburn. There's one.
They got good prospects from Georgia and Alabama
and Maryland. Alabama 3, Georgia is 4, Georgia again is 5, Virginia is 6, New Orleans is 7, Beaufort, Georgia is 8, and then the rest of them are all Floridians. So
that's probably how it should be.
Yeah. I would like a few more of those Florida guys, but I mean, I'm a guy. Chris Doring and I both believe you got to protect your home turf. That means your state.
Yeah,
and
I think the real key is you got to protect all of Florida. I mean, you cannot use your connections. If anything, the biggest fault for the last staff when it came to defensive recruiting, and that's why they did do a fairly decent job defensive recruiting. You look at the secondary; it's going to be in good shape. They got 3 legitimate starting corners next year. They're bringing back almost, I think, all their safeties. They're only losing Chauncey Gardner. You look around, though, they turned down multiple players, especially Randy Shannon, just because they weren't from an area that they had strong recruiting ties. Like Florida did not recruit the Jacksonville area very well at all. That's why they never really were in the picture for Jeremiah Payton. They missed out on what's the guy who went to Ohio State. The 5-star.
And he had 2 state champions out there too, right?
Yeah, they missed on some guys just because of the bias that the coaching staff had, and that's kind of a cheap way. That's like I'm not trying to be offensive, but it's like a second market, way of recruiting. Just going for the guys that you have, maybe you knew the administrator for 10 years, or they'll let you in the door right away, and
cherry picking.
That's kind of you see what I'm trying to say. So Florida's coaching staff has done a very good job, because a lot of these guys, besides, like Larry Scott, have been hired from areas that recently they haven't been recruiting, so they don't have the benefit of these, buy one, get one deals where they can get in the door really easily. They have had to work very hard at building these relationships, and you look at how they reestablished Lakeland. You look at them getting, flipping a guy from Miami and taking back him, Kingsley Eglekun from Jacksonville. You look at the guys that they got in Georgia, Tyrone Hopper, keeping him away from Georgia. Mm-hmm. He's a top 25 player from that state of Georgia. Getting 5 players from the state of Georgia is absolutely critical. Mm-hmm. Mark Richt tweeted 3 weeks ago that he loves recruiting in Lakeland. Well, if that's true, they didn't get one prospect from there. So that's the battles that Florida needed to win. They did well in Fort Lauderdale. They've done well in Tampa recently under McElwain. The areas that they were missing on, they hit them this cycle, and that's really the big takeaway.
And whereas they got all those wide receivers, and it's last year, they got skill positions, they got running backs. They're focusing a little bit more now on offensive, defensive linemen, and of course, as you point out, linebackers and I think you said defensive backs.
Yep.
All right. So anybody jump off aside from the Lakeland 3, who for lots of reasons are popular these days, is there anybody who jumps off this page at you? I only know one of these kids personally, that's Trent Whittemore, who I really like as a kid and as a good player. He'll never be an All-American. He's out of the Chris. I was going to say Chris Doring ilk, but Chris didn't have a scholarship, so it was a little different for him. But both 2 Gainesville guys,
Sure.
And his dad, by the way, played at same time Chris did. All right, so let's look. Is there one that jumped? We know about Jalen Jones. We have a little. We just talked about Hammond a little bit. Summerall looks to me like one of the most interesting guys.
Yeah, I want to talk about Summerall, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
6'5", the biggest thing for him that I was concerned about are the two factors I kind of mentioned. These guys are a package deal, like I said. But Summerall is going to be on campus 4 months before, and he's going to go through spring ball before Keon Zipperer. I'm extremely interested to see how he does. I think he's going to do extremely well. Don't get me wrong at all. But 6'5", 220 pounds, I believe it is. He absolutely he has the frame. You look at his frame. He's going to hit the weight program hard for the next 3 months, and he could be this guy. I believe that he could be a guy that we're talking about in spring practice as a guy who is going to, be like kind of a Jeremiah Moon was as a freshman. You could instantly see the potential in what he was going to be if everything went well, and I think that's what we're going to be talking about. It's also going to be interesting to see how, again, Keon Zipperer does in the next 4 months before getting to campus. I was wondering to see if him and Hammond could end up as early enrollees, considering they didn't start the early enrollment process. Mm-hmm. And Keon Zipperer is ranked as the number 1 tight end in this class by ESPN. They're incredibly high on him. He's ranked as the number 66 overall prospect. ESPN's kind of a lot higher on some of Florida's guys than these other services, which I can see, especially the Lakeland guys. So I think Summerall is going to benefit a lot more because he's going to be able to early enroll. It's going to be very interesting. I think that's going to be the better get for Florida, even though kind of the two guys are ranked higher, just because they're getting him in on January 5th.
Yeah, well, there's that. We don't know about all the speed. We don't have the times on it. But I'll tell you what, the numbers that jump up me are some of these sizes of these kids. You mentioned Hammond. He's 350 pounds. All right, that's a grown man right there.
Oh yeah, and go watch his film. He dominated against a lot of the guys. Like he dominated against Justin Igboyi and several other guys that are signing with places like Alabama and such, and getting those guys playing against them and going against them in camps that's a great sign that he's up to what he says he is. And Lloyd Summerall in that state championship game that they won 33-20, I think he had 7 tackles, 1 sack, and a forced fumble in that 13-point win. And if you can do that on the high level, on the big stage, that's the guy that college coaches are salivating over.
And speaking of size, Ethan White, 390 pounds. Well, yeah, and then a few others.
I got to tell you something. Dan Mullen was kind of saying that he's going to do. Dan Mullen, we talked to him afterwards. He was very optimistic about how Ethan White is going to do in the strength and conditioning program. He was very optimistic about how he's going to do. He said that it wouldn't be that hard for him to lean out. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Yeah. He is just as big as advertised. Let me say that. Yeah.
All right. So wrapping things up, if you look at this, depending on how you look at it, and I saw part of Mullen's press conference, but as someone said too, you can make signing day be anything you want it to be.
Sure.
It can be about the great crop you got coming in this year, or you can make it be about you didn't have that many spots available, so you didn't take that many. You twist the story to how it fits your need. And Mullen even hinted about it a little bit today, talking about how you want me to say this. I'll say what I always say this time of year, and I'll say next year, and that is that we won't know for 3 or 4 years. The reality is, being just dead honest about it, it's a little bit disappointing, except for the Lakeland 3. Now, looking at it for the star system, as we know, Mullen doesn't do it that way. A lot of coaches just use that as an excuse. Well, we don't really care about it. Mullen truly has he has layers. He tends to hit a certain side of the ball or a certain, 1 year, and he goes after guys he thinks are coachable. And he may pass on a guy others would want, and he may miss some guys that he wanted. But the fact is, he's going to take what he's got and mold it and shape it into something. And I think for his needs, it's like the old thing in the NFL, never draft for need. If the Gators drafted for need, they wanted to get, obviously, the running back, Trey. What's his last name?
Trey Sanders. Yeah.
Obviously, you didn't get him. But you want to get all the 5 stars, and you go after the ones you think you have a shot at. But also, it's also a plan that can work for you in long term. and he's not in any hurry. He's going to take his time, build it by layers, and do it differently, like he's always done it, like he did it at Mississippi State, and he's going to be okay. But it's not a real bell ringer in terms of, wow, did you see all those players Florida got? You saw some good players, but nothing that knocked you out.
Yeah, and I think that if they do get DeJuan Black in and they get the other guys in, it is going to be a class that is going to finish top 10 at best case scenario, and that is a class that in a second real, this was his first real recruiting class for Florida to finish top 10 when they haven't had these amazing seasons until now, and they haven't proven until now really, I guess, that they can have great quarterback play and a good offense. It is even more impressive that they've got you said they only signed, what are those guys? What were they? 8 of them defensive players or something?
I have 6.5.
6, yeah. So,
unless I missed somebody, I didn't see him.
No, sure. I'm sure.
No, I'm sorry, I missed one at the top. So actually,
so many guys and
7.5.
Yeah, I'm not trying to, I'm not knocking Martez Ivy by saying this, but he, is rated as one of the highest 5-star prospects of all time, and Florida necessarily, and he's not going to be a guaranteed first-round draft pick like he may have been if he had gone someplace else. I'm not, but the truth is they had 3 offensive line coaches in 3 years and 4 4-win seasons in that time, and so for them to still, when they kind of didn't benefit a 5-star offensive lineman recently, for them to still be getting a guy like Diaby Hammond, who's the number 2 offensive guard, like I said, and then 6 others and flip guys from Miami, that speaks volumes to how much prospects already believe in the offensive overall and the short-term future of the Gators. I was talking to Pat earlier, and he said we kind of agreed, and I think a lot of fans should agree with this, that it is still impressive that that players are buying in when other prospects can go to schools where they're showing them the football facility right next door and how they can walk across the street, and Florida still doesn't have a standalone facility, and the players still signing today are going to be juniors when that happens, and they can't show them full renderings, and there's no real progress to see. The fact that they're still able to get a top 10 class while every other program out there has those things is even more so impressive. And I think that if we love to put a ranking on it, a number on it, you also have to add those asterisks and add in those variables and say, man, they're missing out on 15% of practices because 20 minutes of the like 3 hours they get is spent walking across the damn street to and fro, and they know that. And so to be able to still sell players on that, that you still are needing to upgrade your locker rooms, it does speak volumes to how much people are buying into the staff and ignoring those intangibles that are ultimately meaningless.
Yeah, well,
in a sense.
But I was just thinking about kids.
There's a benefit to all those things, but that's not going to get you in the NFL necessarily.
I know.
5 stars still blow it out. Alvin Kamara still had a transfer from Alabama. Yeah. It's never a guarantee, but they certainly help. Yes.
Yeah, and I think that the thing is now is to see how this team gets developed. Development. We said all that. Development is the key for Dan Mullen. And as far as the other facilities go, think about this: if you were going to Cameron Indoor Arena in North Carolina, Duke, and seeing for the first time without knowing the backstory, what would that look like?
Yeah, I don't know at all. I think that there is a struggle. And a lot of people certainly appreciate, the swamp and the history of it. But in this generation, which people love to call millennials, and what do they call it, Generation Z? They love to call us ignorant of the past and other stuff, which I'm sure every generation is guilty of that in a sense. They love to say that. And so, but the difference is the history is getting lost more and more and more. So you're needing to find a way to upgrade what makes it, special, while also sticking with the history of the past and honoring it. And that is a challenge that these programs like Duke and Florida and Michigan and such and such and such, UCLA, are going to have to find a way to balance that correctly going forward while not alienating the people who loved what it was when they were there and such.
I looked at the clock and I was, I'm 10 minutes over.
Yeah, man.
So, it was good stuff. I wanted to keep
that.
going. No, I just realized I'm 10 minutes late. I enjoyed the conversation. Good job. Good stuff.
Me too, man.
Appreciate it.
Thanks,
all right,
buddy.
Graham Hall.
Thanks, GNK. I'll see you guys.
Thank you, buddy. All right. I'm sure now they're all wondering. I know T-Mac is sitting there waiting, and I got to play a commercial. So let's get a commercial in there and get it going. And I'll get back here with T-Mac in just a minute and see what Terry Norvell's got going on. And we will, by the way, while I'm waiting, I'll put this picture up. The one you might get a kick out of. That's one you'll remember about. This will define this draft probably, or this National Signing Day for sure. So, all right. Let's see if we can get this thing back in gear. And unfortunately, going a little bit over with Graham. And I want to get a hold of my buddies and see what we got happening here on Daniel L. Hightower, lawyer, fighting for accident victim justice since 1976. We're going to see if we can dial T-Mac and catch up with him. Boy, it's going to be a long day when we get through. I started at 7 o'clock, did you? And it's been a crazy time. So we had a lot of football today. But you know what? It's always a good day. We have one of our biggest crowds on this night. Not to hear me, because I'm not the guy when it comes to recruiting. I hopefully can just facilitate that. But we're going to have a conversation about it. And we talked a lot about it the last 2 weeks, that's for sure. So coming up, Terry Norvell will join us here in just a minute. We'll catch up and see if we can get a hold of Terry. We're running a little bit behind all the way around.
Hey, buddy.
Hello, Mr. Norvell. How are you?
I am doing well. How are you?
Well, I'm looking for you on my screen, and I hope that you pop
up. Hold on one second. Let me hit my camera real quick.
You go ahead and do that while I grab this real fast, this commercial, all right? Sportswear, be sure and check them out. Go online, order to get your gear for the Peach Bowl, Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl coming up, and they're our clothing partner, and hopefully you'll support them because they support us. And speaking of support, here's my old radio partner who's cranking it up still up in Jacksonville on his show College Sports Today, Terry Norvell. How are you, T?
Mr. Martin, I'm doing well. Fighting a little cold that you had, I'm coming down the backside. Boy, it got on me pretty good.
It'll do that, man. I'll tell you what, and it stays with you. That's the other thing.
You told me that.
Yeah, hopefully you don't come down with it. But anyway, it's been a long day, a lot going on, and tell us about your show so people know about it and what's going on. You're doing some interesting things, and T-Mac's he's one of the real footballaholics, if such a word exists, because he loves to talk ball all the time. He'd do it for nothing. He likes it. Well, maybe not nothing, but we practically do it for nothing anyway.
Yes, we
right?
do. Yes, we do.
So the show. Tell people where you can hear the show, and I know you're all over the recruiting stuff, as you're almost everything. But you're not just doing
absolutely
Gators. You do predominantly Gators. Tell the folks about the show.
Yeah, it's called College Sports Today. You can find it obviously on Facebook Live. Just like the page, College Sports Today, and it airs Monday through Thursday. I'm on like at 6 p.m. in the evening, and then Friday we do midday lunchtime. Nobody wants to work on Friday evening, but yeah, obviously heavy college football, which will always be heavy Gators, and then obviously we'll blend into recruiting and basketball and baseball. But college football, buddy. It never goes out of style. That's all we want to talk, and we love it. And certainly today on my show, like all shows, it was all recruiting. And what a day for Florida, I thought.
Yeah, I'm trying to put that in perspective right now because you can spin this thing any way you want to. If you're looking for the stars, the Star Fest, Florida didn't get that today. So you don't going to get what Alabama. I think the lowest rating they got is their punter. I think he's a 3-star punter.
Yeah.
Everybody else, of course, they led the nation in stars.
Sure.
I'm not a stars guy, but I recognize that comes with it, and part of it. So, how did it shape up for you? And give me your perspective on the Florida situation.
I thought it was a great day for Florida, and I'll tie Florida State and Miami in as to why. But getting back to your stars and things, I think one thing spoke volumes to Dan Mullen and his staff. They basically identified their class, and if you think about it, buddy, they signed 20 whatever guys.
20.
How many? Mm-hmm. 20 guys. They were signed by noon. They were signed by lunchtime, basically, which means that class that they identified, they didn't waver. They identified those guys. They recruited them. They offered them. They got solid commitments. That impressed me, number one. There was no defection. There was no, carryover for 3 or 4 days. There's one guy that hasn't signed. I think Black hasn't signed, and it may be because of waiting on some transcript stuff. I thought Florida got who they wanted, and it stayed true. Buddy, I thought it was a wonderful day for Gator football because of A, what Florida did, B, I thought Florida State had a very disappointing day, and C, I thought Miami had, when you factor in Miami's got a 4-star quarterback who basically redshirted, who is going to transfer out. I thought it was a disaster of a day for Miami. So you factor all that, I thought it was another great building block day for Florida Gator football.
Well, I think you make a good point. If you look at the state competition,
Mm-hmm.
Florida won the state.
By a mile.
And if you go back to the day when Florida State was where UCF was right now, pretty much, they weren't there yet. And I remember that when Charlie Pill got in trouble and Florida took the big hit, and Florida State, they just mopped up. And what's interesting about that is that the late Charlie Pill told me one time, said if we hadn't got caught cheating, he said Florida State never would have caught us.
Yeah.
Because it was just except for Miami's little run, and let's be honest, back then, not that many Miami kids were playing in other places. They were playing, but they weren't. They were pretty much, Miami was a Miami-oriented team, and of course Florida was the SEC. Anyway, the point being, as you said, Florida didn't lose any ground to the rivals in the state of Florida.
And I'll tell you another thing, buddy. Before people watching, obviously, your show, before they say, well, here's a couple of Gator guys on a Gator show just lauding Florida. I got home today. I got out of my work clothes and put on some comfortable clothes and went to my studio and did my show. But I got home today around 3-ish when ESPNU was going off the air, when they were signing off of all their recruiting programming all day. And the host, I can't remember who the host was, but he had Tom Luganbill and Tom Van Haren were the two experts, right?
Yeah.
So he threw his last segment. He said, guys, as we sign off here at 3 o'clock, what was your final takeaway in terms of programs that really had good days? And Tom Luganbill and Van Haren both immediately went to Florida. And they said, Florida, the Gators had a huge day. The Lakeland Trio helped that. And they both said, and these aren't Florida guys, buddy. These are national guys that know the game, and they're neutral. And they both said, today the Florida Gators won back the state of Florida. And I couldn't agree with that more. I thought it was a just huge day for Florida in the Dan Mullen building block of returning Gator football to where it is. You also made the point, buddy, Florida State is down. Absolutely. Miami is a mess. Absolutely. You've got to take advantage of that. Those things don't happen all the time.
Right.
And it looks like Dan Mullen and Gator football is the brand is so back. And it's only been a year, but it's back across the country.
Yeah, you can't ignore the Lakeland 3 story, which has got so much symmetry to the story going back to 2007. In fact, I got a question for your audience this week. Ask them if they can name the Lakeland 7.
Yeah, that was tough. We were talking about that a little bit today, and a couple of you, obviously you know the stars, the Pounceys and Rainey and those guys, and I guess Ahmad Black was one of them. And there was one
Not
guy
right at first. He didn't play very much at first.
Yeah. There was one guy, I guess, that was part of it that didn't work out. I think Paul Wilson was his name.
He
was
actually
a kid that
played some. He
played
got
a little
hurt,
bit.
Didn't play as much as they thought. was
And,
Seaver.
but boy, that was a backbone. And again, I mean, think about Lakeland this year. They just went out and won the 7A state championship.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the next biggest classification.
Absolutely.
And but the point is, you've got to be ready to take advantage of. Hey, when your enemies, hey, if your enemy stubs their toe, you're not supposed to give them water and help them up.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Right. I've got about 3 minutes. I want to make sure I maximize it. Take me through one or two of the players that we talked about. The Lakeland 3. Is there one or two players on this squad that? And by the way, I figured out there were 7.5 defensive players and 12.5 offensive players.
Nice.
And then if you go down the list and look at them, and I believe 12 were from Florida and 8 from out of the state.
Yeah.
So pretty good balance of numbers there. And you can look at the size. You can look at the big guard, Ethan White, 390, and then I think there's some really good athletes on there too as well. We don't know about those 40 times. But what jumps off the page at UT, Mac? Terry Norvell, by the way, College Sports Today, formerly after the afternoon host here with me and Ocala with the Crown Prince. We're on the air together. So, Terry, give me your take on a couple of the guys that off that list of the 20 we just talked about. And
I think, buddy, I went right to the offensive line. It was apparent that I thought John Hevesty did a great job this year with maybe not the most talented or deep group of offensive linemen, and they knew they had to rebuild that offensive line. I think they went out and got numbers. They got a lot of guys to come in, and I really think this class may be remembered for the trenches. They had to go replace the offensive line, and they did. That's my big takeaway. I think Dan Mullen's always going to have guys that can take the ball, throw the ball, catch the ball, run with the ball. And buddy, you've been around. This is I think Will Muschamp actually used to always say it's a line of scrimmage league.
All the time.
I think Florida's going to be most happy with these, including one of the Lakeland guys, the big offensive linemen, and obviously they got athletic defensive ends because you got to have those kind of guys and outside linebackers in the defense they run. But I think the takeaway is going to be the real replenishment of the offensive line. Number one, quality players, and number two, numbers of players. Remember, buddy, they got very, very light on offensive linemen total numbers a couple years ago.
Yeah. T-Mac, it's good stuff, man. We'll do this again.
Buddy.
Thank you very much. Don't forget, Terry Norvell, go on Facebook, find his show, College Sports Today. He knows this stuff. Thank you.
Thank you, buddy. Anytime, buddy.
All right, man. Terry Norvell.
See you, man.
Thank you. All right, so that's what we got going on. I'm going to take a little break here and go pay a few bills, and then we'll talk to Franz Beard coming up in just a minute. Let's see if we can get our stuff together and make this machine talk. Hold on.
Job-related accidents create incredible stress on your finances, your relationships, and most importantly, your sense of well-being. When the adjuster is not approving benefits you're entitled to by law, you need Dan Hightower to help you understand all of your legal options. Daniel L. Hightower has been fighting for accident victim justice in Ocala and statewide since 1976. Call Daniel L. Hightower today to better understand all your legal options. 352-629-7777. Job-related accidents create incredible stress on your finances, your relationships, and most importantly, your sense of well-being. When the adjuster is not approving benefits you're entitled to by law.
This commercial, we just like it so much, want to keep running it. Let me tell you about another couple of people you need to know about. One of them is Renstar Medical Research. Renstar Medical Research, they do so much good stuff in our community. In fact, among the things they do is they're looking for some kind of way to help deal with the problems of serious diseases and hopefully get relief from things like migraine headaches, psoriasis, osteoarthritis, fibromyalgia, and of course the big Alzheimer's study that's going on right now. Matter of fact, also you can, if you want to volunteer for a clinical trial, they have a lot of them down there, and the information they gather goes up the pipeline, and the FDA approves it, and they start looking for medications, investigational medicines they call them. Right now they got one going on for psoriasis. If you want to register for this, you can call Star Medical Research, and at 352-629-5800, or go to www.redstar.net. Find out how you can get involved in a clinical trial if you would like to do so. So if you're experiencing memory loss, regardless of whether you've been diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, you may be eligible for one of the most current enrolling in the current research studies, and they have several studies going on right now. So give them a call, and remember, Star Medical Research, seeking tomorrow's answers to the health questions of today. Also, I want to tell you about my bank. It's my bank, has been my bank for a long time, and will be my bank for a long time for lots of reasons. Number one, I like going over there and eating their chocolate chip cookies, but I also like going over there and when I need some good service, I need to somebody explain my account to me, which often I do, because the core values of the bank are important to me, and it's driven by local markets. They take long-term horizons on their financial picture. They give you a world-class service. They believe in relationship banking and also faith and family. They have many locations to help you, 82 of them, in fact, in 30 Florida counties. If you want to know where one is near you, you can go right there over to the centerstatebank.com, and you'll be able to find out more information. In fact, here's the graphic right there. I love this. You speak, we listen. They listen to what you're saying. If you're a customer, they strive to be the best, and the best community bank, and the best for us. That starts with you. Center State Bank, centered on community and customer service. Located in Ocala, this is my bank at 352-368-6800, and go by Silver Spring Boulevard and check it out there. Center State Bank, centered on community and customer service. What about now, fans? Beers is probably saying, well, he's abandoned me. He's forgotten about me. He's not going to call me. And that's not true, friends. I'm coming right now. We just get to talking about this stuff, and we can't stop. And it's something about recruiting season where we can't stop running our mouth, huh? Incidentally, happy to report that my daughter, Laurie, arrived today from Colorado. And she and Alexander, my grandson, are here with us at the house. Looking forward to having them around for a while. All right, let's see if we can raise friends. The Iron Duke. If he's really the Iron Duke, he's there. He's probably got mad at me. He's probably going to hang up on me now because I'm so late getting there. I just can't shut people up. I don't know what it is. It must be this National Signing Day deal. Francis, I apologize for being so late, my friend.
I'm kind of the way of the day.
Yeah, it is the way of the day, isn't it? Was it a good day for you?
Yeah, it's a good day for the Gators. I think Mullen did a great job of for the initial signing period, meeting the bulk of his needs. He still needs to add a couple of defensive backs. I feel pretty certain he's got Chris Steele out of California.
So you think you're getting Chris Steele?
Yeah, he's not going to announce till the Army game, which is January 5th, but I'm hearing there's a really good possibility he's already signed.
I heard that tonight, too. Someone says he's just not going to reveal it right now.
Yeah, there's a really good chance that he is already signed, but he's going to have his moment in the sun at the Army game. Mm-hmm. And who can blame him? My gosh, what a great chance for him. But Mullen would like to sign 2 defensive backs. He'd like to sign 2 more, possibly 3 more linemen. I think he's pretty well loaded up at the other positions. I'm going down doing a roster breakdown for tomorrow, and
that for your column?
Yeah.
Great.
It's a roster breakdown after signing day.
Nobody does that better than you, my friend.
So I think they're going to be. I think they're going to need, they're going to need a little movement on the roster. From what I understand, they got 4 guys that are one who's announced and 3 others who are going to announce any day now for the NFL. they got a possibility to lose 2 more to the NFL, and both of them would be potential combine freaks. So they could pick up 2 scholarships there. I have to think that Kyle Trask, if he doesn't have a great spring, or let me put it this way, he can have a great spring, but still might not move up the roster, up the depth chart on the roster. I think he's a great kid and so forth like this, but I also think he's got skills enough to play somewhere. So if, Emory Jones didn't come here to sit, nor did, and Jalen Jones, quite frankly, might be the most talented kid that the Gators have had at quarterback, and that includes Jeff Driscoll and Jacoby Brissett, who are both in the NFL, and Will Grier, who's going to be a first-round draft pick, chances are. Jalen Jones may have the best skill set that we've had since Tebow when it comes to just the overall skill set, because he can run. He's got the great arm. Smart kid, really has it all going for him. So he's another one that's not coming here to sit. So it puts Mullen in the dilemma, do you play the 2 guys that have been here, who both of them are, next year will be juniors in the program. So the potential would be for both of them to be there for 2 more years. Or does Trask move on and play 2 years somewhere? I think Franks, I think, is probably thinking right now that if he comes back, has a really exceptional year, that he could move on next year. And I've talked to a number of people who know a lot more about this stuff than I do, and they think that if Franks makes as much progress from January 1, 2019 to December 31, 2019, as he made from January 1, 2018 to what's coming up is this year is December 31, they think he'll go, that he'll have a legitimate shot to go early and get drafted fairly high. A lot of people are very, very impressed with the progress he made, and they should be. All you got to do is look at the numbers. Those numbers don't lie. He had the most touchdown passes since Tebow, the most passing yardage since Tebow, the highest yards per pass attempt since Tebow. That's been a long time since Tim was here.
Yeah.
People forget it's been a long time since he's been here. So he's going to have a lot of things going for him. So, but as it stands, they're going to need to pick up some spots. I think they'll pick up. The way it stands at this moment, they're going to have at least, I think, 5 roster spots available. Mullen wants to sign 5 more guys, but see, you got to have more than that, because you got to keep some space open, because you don't know who's going to graduate in the spring and who's going to elect to go out. Graduate transfers are the rage now. All you got to do is look at what Florida picked up. Schuler, who had a great year at defensive tackle. Van Jefferson, leading receiver this year. Both of those guys came as graduate transfers. Trevon Grimes transferred in. These are guys who are critical to Florida's success transferring in. So you got to keep some space in there. You can't just bring in some others. So the way I look at it is Florida needs movement. They're going to need at least 3 to 5 more guys move on the roster. So anyway, I'll break that down tomorrow. But in the meantime, I look at this recruiting class and look at the needs that were met. 6 offensive linemen. They were in a situation, they got 10 on scholarship right now, but now they got 16. 18 to 20 is your ideal number, going by the Nick Saban standard. And who's to argue with Nick?
Right.
At this point in time. but 16 is certainly better than the 14 offensive linemen they had last year. Last year they had to give a scholarship to Nick Villano just to have that extra live body there. So this year, they added 6 there. You got a 3-4 defense in which you use 2 or 3 guys as stand-up rush-ins. They pick up Lloyd Summerall, who's going to be a rush-in. Now the linebacker situation, you're going to have 14, 15 linebackers. And a couple, 3 of them are going to be guys that are hybrids that play the rush end or play in space as linebackers. So that situation is good. In the secondary, right now they're going to have like 14 guys, and they'd like to have 16 there, which is ideal because then you can have 12 guys ready and 4 guys redshirting. That situation also pretty close to ideal in numbers because they're, as I said, they're going to get Steele and he wants to sign 1 other guy. So that would get him up to 16. The only spot that really that you sit there and say, well, okay, you got to have at least 2 more guys, and that's on your defensive line, and you got a situation that they need at least a couple more.
Yeah.
This is a place, buddy. This is a place where I think I look for the Gators to sign a couple more and look for a graduate transfer here too.
Yeah.
I really believe that's going to be the situation. Is they're going to do that,
or maybe a JUCO guy. Who knows?
Yeah, they could get it. And Mullen is always gone after JUCOs. When he was at Mississippi State, he always signed at least 2 or 3 guys that were JUCOs, and a lot of good JUCO linemen, in fact. So I wouldn't be surprised at all to see that situation. To see a JUCO of some sort come in.
Yeah. Let me get this into you before we both fall asleep at the wheel here. One of them is I want to get to you and your memories of the Lakeland 7. We identify them all. I knew they were. I looked them up before. But before we do that, it seems to me you can look at this class in several ways. If you look at it from the star system, they were ranked 16th in the country nationally, and every other team. I mean, there's 14 other. How many teams? Florida finished. They're 16th. So I think there were. Let's see. There were like 6 or 7 SEC teams ahead of them in the national rankings. I mean, sorry, they were. Ahead, they were ahead of only 4 teams.
Actually, the Gators are ahead of 6 SEC teams. There's 14 teams.
There you go. I get
teams in the SEC.
Long day, a lot of numbers. My mind is scrambled. But yeah, get what I'm saying.
But see, here's the thing: is I'm looking at the numbers, and Florida's got room to sign guys in the spring. That for example, Alabama's already got 26 guys. Alabama's not going to get another guy. In Alabama, this is it for Alabama. They're not going to get any more. Let me see here. Let me get the numbers real quick just to look at it. Alabama's got 26. Texas A&M has 25. They're not really going to sign any more guys.
Yeah.
Georgia's got 21, but their roster is filled now. They may pick up 1. So Florida has room to move up there. Florida's got room for, by my calculation, 5 guys.
Okay.
Well,
the second thing I want to get, the second part of that question, thank you for that, is that we're talking about the ranking of this. If you rank them traditionally by stars, they don't look that good. But if you look at them like this, as a layered structure, where last year he got his skill players, this year he got more guys, he got more defensive players. What do you get? 7? Well, I counted 12 and a half. I guess only 7.5 defensive. But anyway, the point is the skill positions are taken care of. That they got quarterbacks and wide receivers in the house, and they got 1 quarterback. So the question is, the way Mullen has layered it in 2 years, so that it's like cooking a cake. where it all has to come together. You know, you have to get the eggs first, and then you got to get the batter and however you cook cakes. And so my question to you is, whereas it may not look so sexy from afar, when you see the pieces he's fitting together and the way he coaches kids to get better, it makes more sense. Of the way he coaches, I think it was a really good class. The way the people rank him with the stars, not so much.
Well, here's the thing: is Florida has, you know, Dewan Black is going to sign with the Gators. He has not signed yet, but he will. He's another 4-star. The Gators will have 14 4-star guys. Notre Dame's got 15 4-star guys. The difference is Florida's got 8 3-star guys. And Florida's going to end up, I think Florida's going to end up with 24-star guys. That's just my belief, is they'll end up with that many 4-star guys. Florida right now is 16th. I think when they finish the recruiting process and they have like 4 or 5 more guys signed in February, I think you will see the Gators up probably around 11 or 12, which is an outstanding class. And here's the thing that I look at, buddy. You look at the holes in the depth chart, okay? Florida needs 2 defensive linemen. They need they really and truly need a 4th quarterback, but I think they're only going to have 3. So that's a position, you could say, a position of need. You got 14 guys in the secondary. Ideally, you'd want 16. You got 15 linebackers, which is right there. You got 16 offensive linemen. In a perfect world, you'd have 18. So the depth chart has been filled out.
Yeah.
And effective recruit. Urban Meyer once told me this. He said, if you want to find out how well you're recruiting, he said, take your last 2 recruiting classes. He said, and if you can fill out a 2 deep with your last 2 recruiting classes, you're recruiting perfectly. And there's some truth to that. There is some real truth to that, because if you can't fill out 6 offensive linemen this year, and I think they had 3 last year, so that's 9 offensive linemen, for example.
Yeah. All right,
that's
friends.
Pretty good indicator right there.
Yeah. I want to jump out of here for a second. I got my grandson back in town, and I want to see him say goodnight before he goes to bed, but I wanted to say to you, you got the stage. You knew this group of people a long time before most of us did, and you were constantly talking about the Lakeland 7, and you were the one that kept saying, why isn't Urban Meyer playing Ahmad Black? I don't understand it. And he wasn't getting much playing time. When he finally got in there, all he did was make
All-America.
And make, by the way, break up 31 passes and intercept 13 of them. That's all he did. And plus make a lot of good tackles. He could close down on a secondary, as a safety, like very few people I've seen. And, of course, he played some in the NFL. So made
the interception that saved the national championship game in 2008.
Yeah.
The Pounceys both made All-America. Ahmad made All-America, and Rainey made All-SEC.
All right, tell them who the other 3 were.
Wilkes and Paul Wilson had to give up football because of injuries. So John Brown was the only bust of the bunch. John Brown was the only bust of the bunch.
Yeah, exactly. There you have this, like Lakeland 7.
Yeah.
And so now we get chapter 2 of the dread of the Gator Knots. And that was a special moment today, to have all that power packed at one table and to have those kids all commit, bing, bing, bing. That was a great commercial for Florida football.
3 kids who are going to play as true freshmen, too.
Yeah.
Zipper is probably the biggest mismatch receiver in the country, because he's 6'2" and he's 240.
Yeah.
He can block as a tight end. You can flex him out. You can put him in motion. He's got serious skills with the ball, great hands, and he's got like 4.58, 4.59 speed. There are wide receivers in this country that can't run that fast.
Yeah.
Dayami Hammond I mean, you're talking about 353 pounds of absolute moose. I think he's got a chance to start at guard as a true freshman. And Lloyd Summerall, think the next Javon Kearse.
Yeah.
6'6", 220, absolute freak off the edge, who is probably, when he leaves here, probably going to be about a 6'6", 260-pound guy that scares the bejabbers out of every quarterback in the country.
Yeah, it looks like he's going to be a force.
He's going to play from day one. He's a total athletic freak.
Yeah.
Florida doesn't lose too many recruiting battles in Lakeland.
No, they don't.
As long as Bill Castle is the coach there, 7 state championships, 3 national championships, and he's had his last 4 state championship teams there have gone 15-0. Guy knows pretty much how to coach, wouldn't you say? And as long as he's the coach there, there's going to be a University of Florida pipeline. The good players out of Lakeland are going to come to Gainesville.
Yeah. Francis, as always, good stuff, buddy. I'll check back with you. This is an unscheduled night for you, but I'll check back later in the week to see if you're available for a minute or two. And I'm glad that we had the expert on the Lakeland 7 right here on our program today.
Oh, gosh. Let me just add one quick thing since I know you got to get on there. The year after the year the Gators signed, all the Gators these kids committed in June to the Gators. They played 15 games that year, and I was at 10 of them. And the kids were they were absolutely entertaining. They were amazing. They wrote columns for me about their commitment to the Gators. It got to the point where they would come up and they had 2 rest stops. They would deliberately stop at these rest stops on game days here, and they were greeted like rock stars because Gator fans would see them. They'd get out of the cars intentionally, and Gator fans would see them, and they were like rock stars. Yeah. and it really, those kids just really captivated. Yeah. They were the heart and soul. Along with Tebow, they were the real heart and soul of a national championship team in 2008.
They were, and by the way, I love the story about when they went to Tallahassee, got up there, met with Bobby Bowden, got in the car, called Urban and said, we're coming to Gainesville, and they never looked back.
Bobby couldn't remember their names. and the kids came back here, called up Urban and said, are you in your office? And he said, yeah. And they said, well, we're going to come here and commit to you. And Urban said, I'll be here all night if you need me to. Yeah. And they came there. They came there, committed to him, get in their car, and they drive down, and they're at the rest stop just there at Payne's Prairie, and they call and they tell Lisa Webster, hey, Mom, guess what? We're Gators. And she said, she just about fainted. And she said, you're what? He said, yeah, we're Gators. We just committed to Urban Meyer. And she said, where are you? He said, we're at the Payne's Prairie rest stop. He said, you guys stay right where you are. Don't even move. Loaded up the car, got Rob Webster, their dad, got the girl, they got their 2 sisters in the car, and I think Chris Rainey, who's like their brother, got in the car with them, came up there. They met, and Lisa told me, she said, I was coming up there and I was going to give Urban Meyer a piece of my mind and tell him my boys were Seminoles. There was no way they were going to be Gators. She walked in that door, determined that's what she's going to do. And in 5 minutes, Urban had her charmed. And the next morning they threw out all their Seminole gear and they were Gators for good.
Good story. Francis, great job. I got to go. Thanks for coming on tonight. Again, I apologize for being late.
Take care, buddy.
All right, Franz Beard. The Iron Duke in the house. Let's wrap this up. I got to talk about a couple of clients here and people that we really appreciate their support of this program. They've been very supportive and helpful, and we sort of do this for free otherwise. And listen, by the way, let me just make a personal note here. I've been doing business here for longer than your grandpa was alive, and I can tell you I've had an awesome experience. This is a place that is an institution in a good way, not a bad way, in north central Florida. The late Augie Griner started it, sold it to Bill Davis, and now it's David DeSantis is the owner. And it's the same good service and the same terrific clothes. Their lines are great looking. They have sport coats. You'll see the guy on the right-hand side actually wearing one, which I just got and I love. And at this time of year, when you're needing some help on something for your husband, your granddad, or whatever, this is a good place for you to go, because you'll be stuck and say, what should I do? Should I buy a tie, or should I buy a nice shirt, or hey, maybe I want to spring for my 16-year-old's first suit, whatever. Grinders has been, it's like to say, they're a 62-year-old institution. They've had this place, although it's been located in 2 other places. They're there to serve you, to give you good advice, and to help you get what you want and get it to you in timely fashion, and make sure you're happy with it. So if you need men's clothes and you want to have something you can be proud of no matter where you wear it, I strongly recommend you go to 405 East Silver Springs Boulevard in Ocala, 693195 telephone, or if you want to go online, it's grindersofocala.com. And you can see what they've got. They have lots of stuff on Instagram. I would highly recommend, if you're even thinking about men's clothing, that you don't buy it till you should go by and look at what they have at Grinders, because when you get through seeing the service they got there, and they don't force things on you, don't high pressure you, you'll be glad I told you about Grinders for Men, Ocala tradition for 62 years. And then finally, let me say thank you to the folks at Mark's. I appreciate so much. I mean, how could you not love that? It's just one example of the fine food they have at one of the premier restaurants in this area. Mark's Prime Steakhouse and Seafood has 2 locations to serve you, one in Gainesville, one in Ocala. And this is, I'd love to put this up because it looks so delicious, and it's so late at night, and you know you couldn't eat it if you had it, but boy, oh boy, that's a good-looking dish right there at Mark's Prime Steakhouse. They want to treat you to a unique experience, and there's a saying among chefs that you want to please your palate and soothe your soul. Well, go by there and let them help you to show you what some of the dishes are. And Mark's Prime has a special feature. When the weather's bad and you don't want to go out in it, well, they have a complimentary chauffeur. It's not chauffeur. I wish they had this. Complimentary valet parking, so you can go right to your car. They have fresh seafood, premium wines, the finest beef, finest naturally fresh vegetables. Just check it out. And by the way, ask about those gift cards. They had a great deal on, and what a great gift that would be to get a dinner for 4 or even 2 at Mark's as your gift. Check it out. Mark's Prime Steakhouse and Seafood, and you will have a wonderful experience when you go there to eat. Their service, everything's good. All right, let's go wrap it up for the night, and we will we'll see you tomorrow. We're going to have a holiday schedule next week. Regular show tomorrow. We haven't decided about Friday, and we're taking off Monday and Tuesday because of, there is something called Christmas Eve and Christmas. We'll keep you up to latest news up to you on any more recruiting news. And I want to thank you for sticking with us all day today and tonight. Appreciate that very much. And thank you for the information that you bring to the program. Get a Nation Kingdom, and go there and post when you have something that's newsworthy. Post it and share with your friends on the Get a Nation Kingdom. It's the best place to get your information, and you get it from a bunch of nice people who are, you're not embarrassed for your friends to listen to watch. All right? So until tomorrow, I'll say good night, and thank you for listening and watching.